I have in my head.
You what?
It's that other picture I have in my head.
Signed in. No,
That's what.
I took care of that before I came, I hope.
Good job.
I got paper. The internet is up. And,
Oh, now is it?
yeah, I wonder if it had something to do with their when they get stuff ready.
Could be.
Good evening, and welcome to the Muscatine Community School District's Board of Education meeting for Monday, March 5th. Madam Secretary, would you take roll for us and determine a quorum?
Most definitely. Director Bauer,
Here.
DeVete,
Here.
Drava,
Here.
Finn,
Here.
Mather,
Here.
McCarter,
Here.
Wildermuth.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. If you would all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of our visitors this evening and our media representatives. Following along on our agenda, our next item is our Student Council report.
Hi everyone, my name is Saul Ocampo. I am currently I'm currently the student body vice president, and so that means I'm also the vice president of our student council. So just to talk about a few things that we've been doing the past few weeks especially. One of the biggest fundraising events that we have for charity, actually we just got over with, and that is our Senior Survivor charity event. And what that is basically is just a week where we keep 6 partnerships of seniors in the school all week, and we just have different challenges for them and different kind of opportunities for them to earn points and to experience, especially one of our goals is to experience a life that they're maybe not used to, with a lack of resources or a lack of sleep or a lack of really the basic necessities that we kind of take for granted sometimes. So that's a part of the goal that we have for the Senior Survivor. And another part is to also fundraise for the charities that each partnership has chosen, and actually have the numbers. And so once at the end of the week, we kind of rank them, and they that's kind of how they win Senior Survivor, I guess, based on the amount of money that they raise and the amount of points that they earn throughout the week. So in 6th place, we had Callie Lang and Noah Steins raising $714 for Mental Health America. In 5th place, we had Lauren Brady and Alex Prasad raising $783 for Cancer Connection. In 4th place, we had Cameron Christensen and Abby Ulf raising over $1,500 for their charity of Child Abuse America. It's kind of a difficult to remember all the charities. 3rd place, we had Paige Miller and Antonio Melendez raising $2,783 for the charity of Dance Marathon, University of Iowa. 2nd place, we had Morgan Hoganson and Miles Utley raising $2,160 for their charity of the Erica K. Hope Alliance. And in 1st place, we had Ellie Cahill and Ethan King raising over $3,700 for their charity, which was Relay for Life Muscatine. So as each of these charities, or each of these partnerships chose a charity, and as I mentioned, this is kind of our biggest fundraising for the whole year in terms of charity. And really, it's one of our bigger events in general, just because we're kind of there all week. So, but here I have Kayla Schultz also going to tell you a little bit more about what else we're going to be doing in the next few weeks.
So we are planning a dance that is going to be held on Friday, March 23rd, to raise money for the local Humane Society. And we're sending 14 students this year to participate in Muscatine's annual Day of Caring through United Way on Wednesday, March 8th. And upcoming events for the rest of the semester include prom on April 21st, the middle school dance hosted at the high school, the teacher appreciation luncheon, and the senior breakfast. Application packets for those interested in joining or rejoining the student council will be out to the high school and middle schools at the end of the month.
And that's all we had. Any questions to any of us?
Did you say what your grand total was for senior survivor?
Off the top of my head, it was a little bit over $11,000, which is, like I said, a lot of money, and of course, it benefits a lot of different people. And it is, I think, single-handedly the biggest charity fundraiser that Student Council has throughout the entire year. So it was a good event. A little bit stressful for everybody involved, just because you're staying at school for about 100 straight hours, so it kind of gets at you. But it's definitely well worth it, and the experiences are also well worth it.
That's a lot of money. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you for coming tonight. We always appreciate the updates on hearing what's happening, and you all are doing an amazing job, so keep it up. Thanks. Next on our agenda is our February and March employee recognition.
All right. Gives me great pleasure to share with you all these individuals that are going to be recognized for our February-March Outstanding Employees. So would Nate Randeman please step up? Nate is a physical education teacher at McKinley and Elementary, and he was nominated by Shelley Knoll. Shelley says that Nathan goes above and beyond for all students. A previous student of his at Jefferson ran into some difficulties due to a family situation. Nathan and the student had a good relationship when he was at Jefferson, and he had become her support system. He will travel across town during his lunch to have lunch with her, spend time outside of school, including her attending activities with her family, and he is the role model that she needs. In fact, he gave her a bracelet that said 2026 on it and told her that this is the year she will graduate. When that happens, he will be there to see it. She is so happy and excited, and things have turned around for her thanks to Nathan. Thank you for what you do. Edna Valenzuela. Edna is an ESL aide at Jefferson Elementary, and she was nominated by Whitney Leza. Edna has made both my girls feel like they have someone to talk to whenever they need something. She sends me pictures of them throughout the day and makes me feel that they are very loved at school. Andrea Wolford. Andrea is a social studies teacher at Muscatine High School, and she was nominated by Rachel Hansen. Andrea is an invaluable member of our social studies department and a passionate advocate for both teachers and students throughout our district. As the longtime head of our department, she established a clear vision of learning that includes global perspectives and innovative coursework. What I most respect now is the way that she continues to mentor me in that role. She gave her time to grow and sustain a model UN program that affords students opportunities to travel to conferences around the world. There is no one in our district that fights harder advocating for teachers and students so selflessly. In her classroom, Andrea works tirelessly to make sure students receive a world-class education. Her heart for students is unmatched, and she takes their growth of her courses personally, celebrating with them in their successes. I've watched her cry tears of joy when struggling students mastered our rigorous writing standards. I'm so grateful for all the ways that Andrea's heart for students has rubbed off on all of those teachers around her, reinforcing the core beliefs that all students can learn at high levels and that all students deserve access to global opportunities. Thank you. Becky Blake. Becky is a media aide at Franklin Elementary, and she was nominated by Nancy Van Hemert, Cheryl Reed, Rebecca Eggert, and Michaela Gertzma. And all of these people said this: Becky interacts with all staff and students at Franklin on a regular basis, as she is in our media center and front office. She is never without a smile or kind words to all she is around. When schedules need to be altered or changes need to be made, she is extremely flexible. Recently, our media center was painted. Becky came in on weekends and early mornings to box up books and have everything ready quickly for the students. She wasn't asked to do this. She chose to, and was more than happy. When asked why she was spending all this extra time getting things back in order in the media center, her response was simply, "I wouldn't have it any other way. I want to make sure everything is as nice as it can be for the kids. They need books to read, and I want them to be available as soon as possible. I'm happy to do this, and if I know it makes a difference for kids, I'm doing it." When Becky sees students without proper weather-appropriate clothing, she privately brings them in for them. She wants no credit or recognition for this. She is not out of the ordinary for Becky. These kinds of generous acts are what we see from her daily. She truly makes a difference for students, staff, and families at Franklin School, and she is a blessing to many. When I think of someone who goes above and beyond to help the students at Franklin, I think of Becky. Becky is our media assistant for our building, and when our building was being painted, our entire library needed to be reorganized. That meant taking everything off the shelving, deciding what books to keep, and then putting the entire library back in order. Becky went above and beyond by coming in during winter break and worked so when we started back in January, the library would be ready for our students. Becky truly puts our students first. Thank you, Becky, and we certainly appreciate all that you do. Becky Blake has a kids-first attitude. She's friendly with students and makes an effort to form relationships with each one. Becky is always willing to lend a helping hand, and she seeks out opportunities to help in any way. She does an amazing job making sure the library is always in order and ready for our kids. She is flexible with her schedule, which allows teachers to come in with their classes and check out books. Becky helps all the kids to find books that they will enjoy and get books in their reading level. She goes above and beyond just her duties as the librarian by donating clothes to help the students of Franklin anonymously. Becky is such a great staff member to work with. And we have Connie Servic. Connie is a clerk at Muscatine High School, and she was unable to be with us this evening, so I would like to read to what her nomination was. Brett Woodward nominated Connie. Connie has taken such a huge load off of me, as well as all the other teachers at the high school, by making copies of our assignments for us. She does this in a rapid fashion and is always pleasant and helpful. So we just want to thank Connie, Nate, Edna, Andrea, and Becky for all that you do. It's very much appreciated by us all. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is our Citizen Speak portion of the agenda. This is a time when anyone is welcome to address the board. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, that you state your name and address so that our board secretary can record that information. As part of board policy, we are not able to respond to your comments, but know that you can certainly reach out to board members almost any time, day or night, that they are available and can have a dialogue conversation with you at that time. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? Okay. Nobody's moving in the audience, so all right. Next on our agenda is our board targets and our goals report. And Jerry, I will pass this to you.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Corey to cue up the video. There was a very nice TV report made on the new scholarship software that the high school is using. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to share that. It is another example of a great partnership between the school and the Community Foundation with our new partnership with the School Foundation. And by all accounts, things are up and running well, and I really want to thank the counselors at the high school, Chris Nienhaus, and all of the Judy Holdorf and her staff at the Community Foundation. It took a lot of work for them to get this software up and running and to get the pieces in place. But I think, as you'll see from the video, I think it's is well worth it.
Dozens of local scholarship applications by hand. My brother graduated 4 years ago from here, and when he got the local scholarship, it was this huge packet of papers. Now Callie Curriger and other Muscatine High School seniors applied to nearly 100 scholarships.
It's going through multiple days. Sorry, it's got multiple days. I think I've got it playing in the background.
The Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine just launched their online application for dozens of local scholarships. It is available to Muscatine High School students.
Let's try this again.
Corey, you're doing a great job. Poor guy. No, you are.
Notice nobody jumped up to help you, Corey.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
The Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine just
Tries to take the stress out of applying for college scholarships.
The Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine just launched their online application for dozens of local scholarships. It is available to Muscatine High School seniors, and it is part of an ongoing partnership between their organization and the Muscatine Community School Foundation. Local 4's Myra Cordova joins us in our studio with more on what students think. Myra?
Tiffany, Jim, the application is a one-stop shop for nearly 100 local scholarships. Students tell me having this online application is saving them a lot of time. What are the days of filling out dozens of local scholarship applications by hand?
My brother graduated 4 years ago from here, and when he got the local scholarship, it was this huge packet of papers.
Now Callie Curriger and other Muscatine High School seniors can apply to nearly 100 scholarships with just one application.
It gives you like a whole resource to find new information and find all these scholarships that you didn't know that you could apply for.
And the best part, it's online.
It's just easier to go in and type it.
The Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine is behind the project.
Saves them a lot of time, lessen the paperwork for the applicant.
They say it's self-explanatory. Students fill out their personal information, financial need, activities they're involved in, and based on their answers, the application filters out which scholarships they qualify.
There's a scholarship that would be available to them if they simply say, yes, I've been in soccer. Then a whole list of other questions that the soccer club is requesting will populate.
It's also an easier way to upload transcripts, letters of recommendations, and write their essays.
On the computer, it's a lot easier with the 300-word counts. You have to go in. You don't have to count all your words.
The scholarships range from $500 to $3,000.
University and colleges are expensive.
And with each essay, they're one step closer to paying for college. One less thing these seniors need to worry about.
A lot of people think that senior year is just kind of like easy going, smooth sailing. It's so stressful.
And officials say about 150 seniors apply every year, and in just 3 days, 130 are already working on their application. And the deadline is March 8th. In the studio, Myra Cordova, Local 4 News.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of nervousness on both at the foundation and the high school. Is this going to work? And when I watched the run through, it really was amazing. What they answered would populate questions that would identify what scholarships that they were eligible for, and it really is very slick system. And then for the reviewers, they also get the things electronically, which we've had really positive feedback from them. And in the past, we would have the counselor's office would be inundated with sheets of paper that would get filed in 3-ring binders and get copied and moved around, and so I think there's this is a real nice step forward, and should really help kids prepare their scholarship applications and hopefully enhance their post-secondary entry.
Any questions for Jerry or?
That software was donated by a community member, and the district provides the service, the yearly service upkeep on it, but it was a private person in the community stepped up and paid the cost for that, which was considerable.
Jerry, I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have a specific time for students to apply for scholarship? Is it once a year, more than once a year?
Yeah, there's a time frame, and Mike, I don't know if you remember when scholarship season opens for these local scholarships.
Yeah.
It's usually sometime end of February.
Yeah. It really heats up in March.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And the community foundation is really working hard to garner more scholarships. They're making some good headway with that, and it so far has been a very fruitful partnership.
And March 8th is a deadline that I heard, so if you're listening at home and your student has not, haven't had that conversation, ask them. I can remember last year that night before turned into the morning before, and we were still working through. So March 8th, that's an important.
Nice thing, even if they did put it off, it's doable at this point.
That's right. Much easier than pen and paper.
Yes.
So, great. The next item on our agenda, these are action items, the following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims. We have policies listed, but I believe what we really have are the administrative regulations that are listed under letter E, if anybody's looking at those, and then our student teaching agreement. What are the wishes of the board?
Adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to our next agenda item then, is to approve our audit agreement between the Muscatine Community School District and our audit firm for FY 18, 19, and 20. And Tom, I'm going to guess you get to talk a little bit about that.
I sure can. So the audit committee met January 30th to discuss the FY 17 audit, but we also discussed renewing the services with Bonesack and Fromelt for another 3 years. Since this is for professional services, which is similar to attorney services, we did send out just the one RFP to Bonesack and Fromelt. Typically, we don't send out RFP services for legal services, but we did send out an RFP just to get an estimate back of their proposal for the next 3 years, which is presented in the board packet for $28,500 next year. So comparing that to maybe the last 2 times that we've sent out an RFP, typically the past we've sent out 10, but we've received 2. We've sent out 10 to 10 different firms. We've always received just 2 back from Bonesack and Fromelt and Nolte Corman Johnson. And the price that Bonesack came back with in their RFP is very similar to what we just paid this last 3-year cycle. So
3 years ago, we did go out with 2.
we received 2 responses back 3 years ago, correct?
We're talking about $75,000 worth commitment between the 3 years.
This would be $87,000.
$87,000.
Right.
And what is, I mean, if things don't work out or we want to change, what's the requirement? Is this a 1-year renewable?
Well, this is 3 years, but I believe if for some reason we're not satisfied with the performance and vice versa, they can tell us they don't want to come back, or we can tell them if I believe that's the last part of the agreement.
I mean, I feel like they did a good job. It's just $87,000. I would like to see one or the other quote.
Sure.
Instead of just
The
one.
audit committee was really, because I kind of asked that same question, and they said, you know, when you bring in a new auditor, there is a learning curve, and it
which is what we experienced 3 years ago.
Right, right. And they just felt really strongly that they felt like this firm was, that we should retain them.
It's kind of the way we felt 3 years ago too. We were real nervous about bringing somebody else new in too. So I'd like to see, I guess I preferred to see one more quote just to have a comparison when we're talking $87,000.
And I'm trying to remember when we did that 3 years ago, because I don't think it was necessarily on price that we made the change, but I can't remember.
So, yeah, I don't know. I know it was within $1,000.
It was close. It was very close.
Or less than 1,000. And the 3 years before that, so going back to 2012, Bonesack and Fromelt was 76,000 and Nolte Corman was 81, and the district went with Nolte Corman for another 3 years. So
Don't get me wrong, I feel like they've done a very good job.
and the board can certainly table this until next time too. That's fine.
Yeah, that's certainly an option.
What kind of work is involved with a firm putting together a response to an RFP? I mean,
So, I have a copy, it's like a 5-page document, but this is what Bonesack and Fromelt sent back to the audit committee.
There aren't
So-
that many firms that do school audits anymore as part of the.
I just want to make sure we're not jerking somebody's chain if you say, hey, we want to make sure you're no good for us.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, to Tim's point, how invasive would that be to ask?
I'm sure most of their RFP is probably standard because they do it quite frequently. So it'd just be a matter of pricing how many hours they're going to spend on our audit.
Sure. Does it hurt to ask?
No.
Maybe we ask then.
I guess I would, I would like to see us ask at
Sure.
least.
I would echo Tim. I've been very pleased with their work. But yeah, it just seems as a good steward of resources that we should ask. So I would move to table this until we can get at least one more quote.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to table this item until we have a second quote to look at. Is there any other further discussion from the board?
We're not on a timeline here. I mean, one more month.
Yeah,
is
I
not
don't,
gonna-
since it's for fiscal year 18, which we're just finishing up, you know.
Well, could we have the RFP by that last meeting?
Yeah, we can have it before the next meeting.
Okay.
That's- Shouldn't be an issue.
Sounds good.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of tabling the decision on the audit agreement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Tom, I think the next item is you as well. This is to approve setting the public hearing.
Sure, yeah, nothing's changed since the board work session. This is just setting the time, date, and place for the hearing on April 9th. There were two options presented for 0 and 1% SSA. They won't change, or the only thing that changes is the property tax rate at the bottom. But the budget part in FY19 column would change somewhat as we continue to work on capital projects and management fund and such. But the main purpose is to set the public hearing date.
What are the wishes of the board?
Are you recommending publication of both of these? Is that something we can do?
We could do, I would recommend publishing the 0% since that has the highest property tax rate.
Always
And we
back
can,
it down.
and we can back it down, yes.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the public hearing with the publishing of the 0%
Okay.
SSA.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the public hearing, which would be set for April 9th. That would be here at City Hall at our April board meeting. Is there any other discussion from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. Tom, thank you for that.
Yep.
Our next item on our agenda is to approve the Teacher Leadership Compensation 2018 and 19 Instructional Coaches Plan. I think before we do that, Becky has some information for all of us.
Yes, I'd like to share with the
All right.
board a brief update on TLC. So preparations began way back November 29th, reviewing application processes for the TLC. And these were all vetted by the SBRC, all administrators, our district advisory committee, our current TLC team of 21, and all teachers. The IC positions were posted with an application deadline of December 15th, and we had 42 teachers apply. Interviewing began on January 11th and concluded on January 23rd. 35 people were involved in the interviewing teams, which were made up of district advisory teachers on the district advisory committee, all SBRC members, all administrators, and external personnel, which included 3 TLC lead consultants from various AEAs. Now you might be wondering, what is SBRC? The SBRC is a site-based review committee, and this is a district-wide oversight committee, which is a requirement within the TLC grant. This committee is made up of teachers with equal representation from elementary, middle school, high school, and district administrators. January 31st, a recommendation that was endorsed by the SBRC committee went to Dr. Reby for approval. That committee approved 30 candidates were recommended for IC positions for the 2018-19 school year. All 30 ICs received an email with the building placement, location, and the opportunity for input on February 1st. A second email was sent out on February 8th notifying each potential IC of their teaching portion. All candidates had the option of staying in their current position or accepting the IC position by February 12th. 30 positions were offered, and 30 gladly accepted their new position and their teaching assignments. IC placement was based on several things: student needs, certification of our teachers, building needs, data, best fit, and professional skill set. Some additional highlights that I'd like to share with the board is that ICs will be teaching this year. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is this happening? Well, we have received feedback over the last 4 years that teachers wanted to be an instructional coach but did not want to leave the classroom. We also heard that you're taking our very best teachers out of the classroom. All ICs will have a teaching component along with their coaching responsibilities, which we call this a win-win. We're also expanding teacher leadership. Currently, we have 21 ICs. Next year, we will have 30. Of those 30 ICs, 13 are brand new coaches, and there has been some discussion that there may seem to be some more movement amongst ICs than possibly in years past. In fact, this is the 4th year of TLC, and all 4 years there has been movement amongst ICs. 21 ICs have been relocated over the past 2 years as building needs are ever changing. In the first year of TLC, 20 out of 22 coaches had a change in location, so movement is an expectation when holding a leadership position within our TLC grant. TLC positions were never intended to be a stagnant position, nor is it a means or strategy for budget reductions. Per the state grant, TLC interviews happen on a yearly basis. ICs can have the opportunity to be an IC for up to 3 consecutive years, and then the teacher must cycle off at least 1 year before applying for an IC position again. This fosters opportunities on a regular basis for all teachers to apply for a leadership position. ICs next year will receive a $9,000 stipend, and with that, an additional 96 hours beyond their teacher contract is expected. Any IC returning to the classroom also receives a $3,000 stipend and will be recognized as a model classroom, which incorporates the TLC framework for continuous improvement. I want to thank the board for your ongoing support in giving opportunities for teachers to share with others and being a strong proponent of the TLC. Does the board have any questions that they would like to ask?
Now that $150 million that the state put aside, I guess, over the last several years, that's now gone, and that's just been built right into the SSA, right? Right. So
right. It's been embedded in the federal formula per pupil.
So it's no longer extra money we get; it's just part of our regular budget.
Correct.
It's categorical money inside that.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be used for TLC.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. That is correct.
And one item I really like, you mentioned, Becky, is like that they will be in classroom for some time, and that is really, for me, it's very important piece of that whole deal. So
that teaching portion is they will be teaching 3 periods. So secondary would be 3 periods. Elementary, we said 3 hours because a period is roughly 60 minutes. So either 3 hours or 3 periods.
So Becky, you mentioned we have 21 currently, and I think 30 or 31.
We've expanded to 30, yes, yes.
So if you take that's 50% of their time is coaching and 50% of their time is teaching, does that mean we're reducing the coaching staff?
Actually, now we've moved to more, it's called student-centered coaching, and the student-centered actually happens when they're in the classroom. So the student-centered coaching cycle involves teaching, so they are either co-teaching or teaching currently during a coaching cycle. So actually, they kind of overlap. So it works out very, very well.
So their teaching portion is with another teacher?
They could either be teaching and or co-teaching based on building need and teacher certification.
I think also maybe what you're getting at, Aaron, is that during that teaching component, they will be model classrooms as well, so other teachers will be able to come in. So that's part of what the IC duties are right now.
Yeah, I just want to know, if we have 20 full-time today and we go to 30 part-time, is that reducing the coaching resources, or is it, and will that still be covered, you know, all those pieces to that? And then the other question I had is, if it's a 3-year term and they take a year off, but they want to come back, how will we encourage new?
Yeah, it's not really a 3-year term. It's a 1 year with a renewal of, you can renew it for 2 more years after that.
2 more years, okay.
And so each year you have to apply, and then after your 3rd consecutive year, you have to cycle out. And that was one of the things that from the very beginning was a concern, is how do you keep people fresh, their teaching skills fresh, because what we didn't want to do is create kind of a permanent grouping of folks that were in this area. At the same time, give folks enough time to learn the skills of that position so that they would be effective. I always felt like any building at some point, if most of their people have been through this training and have done this work, if you had a building of teachers that have been instructional coaches, you'd have quite a powerful grouping of staff. And so that, I think, was at the heart of teacher leadership, is not to identify leaders in year 1 and then keep them for 20 years, but to figure out a way to keep refreshing that leadership pool.
I think that's a great, and the 1-year renewal. So a quick question on that. Will we go through the same sort of extensive interview process each year with the same number of people and all the things that happen this year?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Okay. And so then if they do successfully apply for 3 years, then they're off a year as a model classroom. They can come back.
Then they can apply again.
They can apply again, correct?
Correct.
Will that create some sort of limited ability to bring in new people, or will people that have successfully completed the program or whatever, you know, how after that 4th year start to bring in fresh people, you know, how will that rotate through?
Well, we're hoping that the criteria right now with the state is that you have to complete 3 years of teaching. Once you complete 3 years of full-time teaching, you can apply for a teacher leadership position. So we're hoping that that will cycle and expose more teachers, because if we keep it stagnant, then we're not allowing new in. So we felt that this was a way to kind of keep the best of both worlds. So you have up to a 3-year term, so to speak, with 1 year off, and then it's up to them if they would like to reapply. They sure can.
Yeah, I appreciate getting everyone through. I just think once you get through that first cycle, it'll start compounding on itself, and you'll have more if they want to stay in the program, you'll have more people that have experienced the program and new people you're trying to get in. So it'll start to sort of make for a bigger pool that you'll have to draw from.
And we hope very competitive is maybe not the right word, but a pretty deep pool. Because the very first year we did this, we didn't have enough people to meet the number that we wanted to hire, and so that will be a really good thing. Yeah.
And I think I think, you know, the idea that even though if they get approved for the first year, up to 3 years, still every year they have to apply again, that gives some sort of, like, you know, a guarantee that, you know, others can still apply and might be picked, and not just the same people over and over. So.
And I imagine the folks who are processing the applications can also try and look at it and say, well, you know, you've had a good run, maybe we want to get some fresh blood in here too. So.
Yeah, I think it's fair just to do get a stipend, right, that increases their pay, and then when they're not in the program, that comes back. So.
Right, and that's a new addition, because before, when you, when you return to the classroom, there was no monetary
Nothing
compensation.
yeah.
So this builds in that's continuous. So,
we did have some folks the last few years that said after doing it a year said, I don't like this and I want to go back to the classroom. The one thing I think we have struggled with from the very beginning was with the model teachers and trying to figure out the best way to use them. By folding this model in where the ICs are also performing some of that function, and then we have people that have been ICs being model teachers, I think we're going to get, I think that will be, we'll see much more impact of those positions than we maybe have in the past. Not by the fault of any teacher. I think just been a matter of trying to figure out exactly what will work best. And the conversations that we've been having are not isolated. You know, in visiting with the AA folks, lots of districts are trying to still figure out how do we better utilize this system. And
I have a couple things. Just we heard at our working session about relationships, and I heard you mentioned that in the last couple of years, quite a few people have moved. Like you said, like 20 people moved. That's part of the expectation.
Right. So
that they can move. I mean, they can be asked to move to different buildings depending on the need, right?
Correct. There's been movement.
As building a team goes, is there any strength in how often are they if they're moved every year? Is there a potential setback for that with a new instructional coach coming in to a building where an instructional coach has built a relationship with, because they're leading teachers,
Sure.
Right? That's one thing. Second thing, I'm curious in this process, do we have any new coaches coming into new schools for the first time, and do we have any existing coaches that are moving to? So is everybody in a new school? Do we know what that
one
looks
of the
like?
things that when we wanted to go with the teaching component, made placement much more complicated because there had to be a place for them to teach in that building. The other thing I think that quite a bit of time was spent on was identifying what are the needs of the building and what are the skill sets of the people. Because while the relationship is important between teachers, the most important thing is that what is happening is improving the quality of education for kids. And so, you know, every year people move, and as we talked about with our budget, in order for us to maintain a no RIF policy or practice, you're going to have to move people. I mean, that is the bottom line on this. When, you know, we're down 411 kids over 5 or 6 years and we haven't RIF'd anybody, it's because we can move people around. And so the relationship thing is important. I can tell you that sometimes from a coaching model, sometimes it's not always the easiest to coach people that you've worked with side by side as colleagues. Sometimes it's nice to have a different set of eyes looking at and working with a teacher. So I think there's a lot of pluses in it as well. And the other big part of this is that we want to develop leaders. And we don't want to develop the best teacher for Jefferson Elementary. We want to make the best teacher for Muscatine Community Schools. And it's good that they see different leadership styles and different problems and different responses to those problems. Because, you know, we hope that a lot of leadership positions are filled from this group of people that's getting this experience. So I think there's a positive for movement. There's a downside, but I think all of us that have moved, changed jobs, changed locations, changed, there's also a growth opportunity that's pretty positive.
And I would just say, Jerry, I think getting new perspectives and new things is good as well. I think there's an opportunity for just making sure that there's clarity around that as well. You and I talked about a little bit of the documentation that came out beforehand that said every effort would be made to keep instructional coaches in their current locations and things like that. I just think we need to make sure that we're clear on those communications, and so the expectations of all the staff and everyone are kind of on the same page. I think there's an opportunity for that a little bit. But in terms of being on the same page, I think that's fine. I just think we could do, we could take that as an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I think the wording on that FAQ could have been a little bit better. I think the other side of it is we gave folks the opportunity to say, if it means moving, I don't want to go.
Sure.
And
that's input.
I think that, and I'm really glad that everyone that was offered a position took it, because there's some really strong people in there.
I just like listening to, asking questions and listening to the responses and so on. I think, it's overall, it's a great plan. It might not be perfect, but it's a great plan to start with. And if there is still some sort of an improvement in the future, we want to make sure that is there. I mean, that we can be flexible to change things, edit things, and so on. And if there's no other questions, I would like to move to approve the teacher leadership compensation for 2018-2019 instructional coaches.
Can I ask one more question?
Good.
It's about the half and half, like the teaching instructional coach. Is that a model it's elsewhere? What's that look like? What pitfalls do you think?
Yeah, great question. So in looking at this, we looked at other districts, Maquoketa, Clinton, Davenport, Bettendorf, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids. So other districts like ours, larger and smaller, and a teaching component has been added. So that's where we kind of got that idea in collaboration. And the AEAs, they're TLC leads. Each AEA has several leads, and they provide professional development for our TLC team. And a lot of their PD is around coaching cycles and the teaching component, staying connected in the classroom. And so that was a big feature of that. That's where that came from.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say it was our idea, but
well, okay, sure, but it kind of was not.
Was for us.
It was for us, yeah.
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the TLC Teacher Leadership Compensation 2018-19 instructional coaches as presented. Is there any other discussion?
I think, 3 years ago when we were doing this, we were one of the first groups. There was a lot of unknowns. It's come a long ways in 3 years, and I'm sure the year 2 and year 3 schools are appreciative of what support we provided them too. So it's going the right direction. As Nathan mentioned, the money has kind of changed a little bit, I think. But I know there's times where we've wondered what in the world we were doing in year 1, right? So I think it's great, and it's really making a difference in the classrooms too.
Becky, do you know how many individuals are on their 3rd year of the program?
I'd like to say 17, but I would need to go back and double check because we've had movement. We've had some ICs return to the classroom teaching. We've had some return to as a principalship. So you mean from the original group that started year 1?
Well, I'm even thinking,
this year's?
so this 30 that you have.
Oh,
do you
this
have
30, yes.
Do you have anybody that's
17 former, 13 new. So we have 13 new, 17 that have currently been in an IC, could be 1 or more years.
And some of that 17 would be entering their 4th.
Correct. Because every year we have added ICs, areas of concentration. We added area concentration GT, vocational ed. We've had some ICs move into principalship or have moved into the classroom. So there's been additions throughout each year.
Okay.
And I think this year it was those that would have termed out were given another year.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
they didn't know that it was a term out at that point. So there was kind of a grace period.
So they get 1 year, not 3.
Right.
Correct.
Right, because they've already had.
They get,
yes.
They'll have an extra year, and then they'll be asked to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we know then in that 3rd year, or in this case that 4th year, you'll have a bigger need next year of individuals most likely. Right. I mean, you'll be if you're not replaced, if some of those individuals who are already in the program can't
Correct.
apply again.
They will recycle off 1 year with, correct.
Okay. Yep. Good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item is to approve the School Improvement Advisory Committee membership. And Jerry,
Yeah.
do you have some information about that?
I do, and we have a group that their mission this year is to look at how to best market our school and look at some communication strategies. So we wanted to have the business community represented, which we have someone from the chamber. We wanted to have communications represented, which we have someone that's been working with the radio station and the newspaper. We wanted parents. We wanted, I'm forgetting somebody. But we really wanted to get a group that could take a look at communication, everything from crisis communication, and we have someone that has had experience in crisis communication for a large hospital. So we wanted to get a group together that could take a look at what we're doing from website to announcements, take the information that we're going to be getting from the branding work that's been done with the city and hospital and MCC and those folks, and really put together some recommendations for us, because one of the things that we need to do is a much better job of marketing our school district. I think we have a product that we should be able to really sell to people. There's a lot of things that are going to be going on in Muscatine that I think we can piggyback on, but we need to really take a look at our strengths. We need to identify what are the gaps in our communications. How do you best use social media? How do you best use media context? How do you best put together a crisis communication plan? Because you don't want to be doing that in the midst of a crisis. How do you get ahead of the buzz in the rumor mill? How do we put together a message that'll be meet our needs? I think this group will be very good at helping with this. And as we go through that work, there will be some subcommittees and some other folks that will be asked to join in that. But this is a small working group that I think can be really helpful for us.
It's one thing I noticed, I think in the past years, the SIAC committee's been about 20 people.
Right. Last year even more, because last year in doing that plan on the page work, anybody that wanted to be on it could be on it. I think we had 40-some on there, and that work really required a big group.
Right.
This one probably a smaller group with subcommittees that come out of it. And I think this group, this will be, it'll be an interesting topic for us, because we have not put a lot of resources into communication. Lisa's done a lot of work on the side of her real job, but as we all know, communication now can be really consuming. I got a call from a friend of mine on the West Coast, and there was a story in there about Muscatine. I don't remember. I think it had something to do with city government. But he said, "Hey, I just saw a story about Muscatine," and it was, things travel a lot faster than they used to. So we just want to make sure our message is the right message and the positive message about our school.
What are the wishes of the board on the School Improvement Advisory Committee membership?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the list of School Improvement Advisory Committee membership individuals. I will read this list really quickly, actually, since if you're at home, you don't have an agenda, and to see who that is. So the current members, or the members that are being proposed, are Chris Anderson, Shelley Mahari, Andrew Anderson, Jody Hansen, and Toby McCarter. So the motion on the floor is to approve as presented. Is there any discussion? Toby, you don't get paid extra.
No.
I just want you to know that. Right. Which is all in tongue in cheek, because there, of course, is no payment at all. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. we thank those individuals for their service and their input as well. This takes us to our discussion and information portion of our meeting, and the first item, or the next item that we have is the first reading on a policy 401.5, family and medical leave. This is a new policy to the district. If anyone has any questions or comments on those, if you will forward those to our board secretary, that would be great. We'll see that on our agenda 2 more times before we approve that. The next discussion item then is our Early Childhood Center update. And Jerry, I think you...
We got back our the first preliminary report from DLR, the people looking at use of the mall for Early Childhood Center. And they really did a nice thorough job of looking at everything from construction to code to possibilities. We are set up for them to present to the board in that March board meeting to present their findings. And we also will hopefully have met with the mall management team to get some idea of what things are clearly tenant type things and which things may be more clearly landlord issues, so that we can start that conversation, and the board will also have some of that background. In looking at the their initial walkthrough, I was very optimistic that this could not only be a very doable thing, it could be a very good thing for the district and the community. We will have them come in that March meeting and present, and then at that time the board will have a little better idea of what that would entail. I was surprised that for all the space that's in there, how quickly it was filled. It was, I was shocked. I thought there was going to be, what are we going to do with all this? And at the end it was like, oh man, we could actually probably use a little bit more room. Little tykes take a little bit more room. And we have a great open area there to do some things, provide some great opportunities for our kids. And I think we can make it work within the budget that we were looking at, but we will need some partnership with the mall management on that also.
Good. Any questions for Jerry?
I do have a question, Jerry. My first year, when we were closing Washington, we had community, a night where they could come in and weigh in and provide feedback. Will that happen with this as well?
We certainly could. It would be, that certainly a question and answer kind of thing, what that would look like. With the closing of a school, it's always a little bit different than that. But it'd certainly be an opportunity to go through what we would hope would happen there, what that would look like if our sixth graders then go back to the elementary buildings, and how all of those things that we've talked about connect.
Right. Yeah. It seems like I mean, I know it's not closing a school, but it's certainly a pretty big
It's
change.
It's one of those. Overall. It's a little bit of a domino.
Right.
One tips and it affects another and affects another. And at the end of that domino line is this big question that we talked about at the work session. We have a lot of old buildings, and what that might look like. I think that would be as we get more information and we can put that together. I think that would be a great opportunity to get that information out to the public. I think it would be a great PR, because this is a very positive move for the district.
Jerry, do we know how old the mall is? You mentioned the old other building. Is that going to be an issue?
74. Well, it would be if we were looking at this for 20 years or 30 years or whatever. That's one of the things I asked the architects. I said, okay, I want you to tell me, is this just crazy talk that we're looking at this? Because they said, we're really looking at probably a 10 to 15 year solution. And they said, no, actually what you're looking to put into it in 10 or 15 years, you'd have to do it again anyway. You're in that 10 to 15 year cycle of things. So the reason I think it makes a good short-term solution is that, as we talked about, in 10 or 15 years, we're going to have some elementary buildings that are going to be very long in the tooth. That would be the perfect opportunity to take a look at, okay, if we're building a new building, do we add on an early childhood center? And then you're looking at a 50-year solution or a 60 or 70-year solution. I can tell you that the preliminary cost of renovation was about half of what it would cost to build. According to their their calculations. They're also giving us an analysis on the payback on the investment to see if we're looking at 10 or 15 years, where would that, are we long or short on that? Because that is something we want to make sure we're not, wasting money on something. But again, it'd be one of those things I think we look at for a mid-term solution for a short-term problem that connects to a long-term solution. Did I cover all of the time?
You got it. Thank you.
I was kind of impressed with myself on that one. But that is going to be a big issue for the district in the years ahead of what that's going to look like.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll be anxious to hear more about that as time progresses. Any other questions?
I think to Aaron's point, it might be even good to have something at the mall, so you kind of see the mall and what they're proposing and so forth.
Yeah, and we certainly, that would probably be helpful for the board to see that space.
We've all been in there, but it's going to have a little different
It probably looks a little different right now, and to appreciate the space.
Right.
Because the thing that struck me was how much was outside the showroom area.
Okay, yeah, because that's not what you'd know about.
Yeah. We could certainly set up a time, and maybe Lisa, you could do a doodle poll or something to take a fun time when a couple of dates would work for folks to come out and take a look at it.
Great. Any other questions? Our next item then is an update on the RFP for transportation services.
Yeah, we had talked briefly at the work session about this, and I thought we probably needed to bring some sort of closure to things on this. As you know, this was an RFP that was sent out with two other school districts, Columbus and Louisa Muscatine. And so we got these RFPs back. And when you ask about the RFP for the accountant, out of this manual, there's about one page, and on that one page, there's about one paragraph that's really critical, and that's the cost. And so we had two RFPs that came back, one from First Student and one from Durham. First Student came back with a bid of $230.13 per day per route. And they also have different amounts for special education routes and midday routes and those kind of things. And then Durham came back with a cost of $265.85 per day per route. And again, with differing costs. And they also had an increase of about $15 per route on years 2 and 3. So these are always somewhat difficult to calculate out about, well, what is the savings? Tom went through 2 or 3 candles and I don't know how many pencils in working through this, but we were kind of looking at about $1.8 million was our transportation costs. Well, when you calculate out just the routes, because one of the things that we did on this, we had 2 caveats to the RFP. One, we maintained ownership of the buses. That was put in the RFP. The other was that the drivers would not take a pay cut. So those 2 things probably changed the nature of the RFP a bit. But when you put those factors in, and that we're paying for the fuel and paying for parts, the 15% savings that the 3 districts kind of had said we would like to see at least that, I don't think we would see it. And so the other 2 districts, they felt like this wasn't something that would work very well for them. It was presented as a proposal for all three. So really, it would be all three districts would need to go with it or not go with it, and since we know the other two aren't, it's kind of a moot point. But I also felt like last month we had a lot of interest in a public meeting about it, and I thought it would be best in a public meeting that we maybe bring it to closure. So my recommendation would be we don't try to go forward with that. Of course, the board certainly can, but I just don't think we would see the savings for the turmoil it would create.
Jerry, out of curiosity, what would the 230 per day per route work out to in gross terms?
Just for the main routes, it was $1,325,000.
Okay, and what would the ancillaries do?
Well, and that's where some of the things you don't know, because your special ed routes change and add, and they were, I want to say they were $100 a route. The midday routes, I think, were 100. No, I take that back. The special ed routes were the same price. The midday routes were $100.
Activity routes.
And activity routes were
We're on top of that.
Yep.
Yeah, we.
And that was I want to say it was $33 an hour. Is that, yeah.
Just to operate the bus.
Yeah.
So we had the equipment, we had the parts, we had to provide fuel.
What are they doing?
They're providing bus drivers.
Labor and
they're providing all of the human capital.
But with no pay cut. Logistics.
Right.
So, yeah, how would we save any money?
Yeah, and the reason, and actually they said, they typically give a bonus because there are not a lot of drivers out there. And in order, it's not like they bring in a whole bunch of drivers. They're intent on they'd have to hire the drivers we have. So they typically do have to pay at least as much or more to maintain them. Where you probably see savings on these things is if you do sell the buses to them, because then they take on the onus of the parts and all those kind of things. But I just did, I just don't think I don't think we're going to see what we need to see out of this.
There's no variables there, so there's no real opportunity for.
No, I'm afraid all you have is a variable that the cost will eventually go up because their costs will go up.
I think it goes back to what I think Lance said when he was here last month, is there's ideas out there, let's bring them forward and let's start working internally to get those improvements made, so.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're starting to see some payback on are those propane buses. Maintenance is less. We get that nice rebate on the fuel. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Again, the thing that was I think warranted a look with this was the combining with two districts to attack transportation. Because I really feel down the road, districts are going to have to get better at sharing some services because the funds just aren't going to be there.
Is that something that still could be considered?
It could. Here's the Columbus and L&M currently share a transportation director. And so the most you can get in sharing a transportation director is $30,000. So if we shared with them with a transportation director, we probably would have to almost hire another person. I mean, it's kind of one of those things when you start working it out, it's not enough of a...
But to have that larger pool of drivers and larger pool of equipment, it might also, are their routes, do they see as many miles on their buses as ours?
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of variables in there that, maybe we can manage that as a group also.
I think if they weren't currently sharing, Tim, it would be a greater chance to do that because then they could realize some initial savings. They're already getting all the savings they're going to get.
All right.
I will say they would be more than happy to have us take it over and run all three. But I don't think it would be worth $60,000 to do that.
And Jerry, one more point that I would like to add. Yes, looking around is always a great and healthy thing, and looking at costs and ways to reduce costs. But like from last month meeting and so on, hearing the stories, which it does have what I call the human factor in it. And what we heard story-wise, I think it's hard to put a dollar value on a story like that, and the connection between the drivers and the kids and getting to know them and so on. And with all this all together, I think we are in much better position right now. Yeah.
I would say, though, in most places it's the same people.
Yes.
But it's also when you disrupt folks' employment, there's a cost for that also. Yeah. And we've had really good, loyal people. If there would have been a savings of $300,000, that was clearly a savings, and it was going to be a continual savings, I think we would have to take a look at that. Yes. But for something that's not that significant, I just don't think it's worth the disruption to our bus drivers.
Kind of surprised it came back with the $15 more one year and $15 the next. Usually in a proposal like that, it would be the other way around.
Yeah. Well, I think the one that I think one of the things that kept this from being maybe as lucrative for us is that they do have to pay people more just to find drivers, just because again there's a pool of drivers out there, and right now the ones in this area are employed by Columbus, L&M, and Muscatine, and so there's that's kind of the goes with that. But it was an interesting exercise. I think Mike would agree it was a good experience to work with those other two districts, and hopefully open up some other things down the road. Again, I think that's going to be really important that we look at how we can better cooperate with other districts to better use our resources.
I mean, obviously, our first mission is making sure kids are getting the best education, but
right.
It's good to know that I think that our keeping our family together is going to work out. And
yeah.
Do you have any sense, reading the tea leaves on the transportation legislation in Des Moines, what kind of changes we might see?
I think we may see that happen. But something needs to happen with transportation. Transportation is becoming a bigger and bigger chunk of our budget, and it's important. But it also the more you put towards transportation, the less you can put into the classroom. And as the state is looking at less than inflation increases, and I understand their pressures. We're going to have to get some help with some of the things that are mandated by us. We have no choice in what and who we provide transportation to. I always feel like if the state is going to require something, then they should probably make sure they support that. It's a novel idea.
Right.
That's right. We were voted best state. We should. Maybe there's more people coming.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that update, Jerry.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda are the January financials. Tom, I think that's all you.
So presented in the packet then is the January Treasurers Report, and I just have one comment on the agency fund. There again is the quarterly payment we make for early retirees. We've paid their insurance. We're just waiting for that check from the HSA company, so that comes right after the first of the month. The next page is actual revenues and expenditures through the month of January. And I'll just point out on the revenue line for state foundation aid, that typically should be the same amount every month for 10 months, but January is the month where we begin paying Muscatine's portion of those students that don't have a resident district in in group homes. So our portion is about 20, what is the difference there? About 22,000 times 6 months. So our cash was basically taken from us to pay for those students, but we still have the spending authority for those students. So there's one area, another area where our cash can go down, but we continue with that spending authority. So then the next 2 pages is just budget to actual. That's that green and colorful green and red page. And then our actual budget month by month is the next page. Then there's the unspent authorized budget. Again, hardly any change from month to month. I will point out, though, that on lines 5, 6, 7, and then that blank line, you were talking about teacher leadership. And there you can see what our allocation is and has been the last 2 years. And then the other figure we keep monitoring is that miscellaneous income on line 29. So the next 3 pages are the activity fund balances through January, and I've noted those that need to be noted and are monitored and we look into, so nothing major on that report. And then the final report is the school nutrition trend through January. So, no other comments.
Anything for Tom?
Yep.
All right. Tom, thank you.
Yep.
Last thing on our agenda is just some announcements and upcoming events. So March 5th through March 8th is parent-teacher conferences. So that is today through Thursday. March 6th, which is tomorrow, our Muskie boys basketball team heads off to state. They will be playing Iowa City West, and that is in Des Moines. We wish our boys team the best of luck. March 8th, we have a 2-hour early dismissal. March 9th is, that's Friday, March 9th. It's a no-school conference comp day. And then next week, March 12th through the 16th, we have spring break, which means it has to be nicer weather as well, right? Here in Muscatine.
Get your Hawaiian shirts out.
There you go. So March 12th through March 16th is spring break. The board will meet again on March 26th. We will have a work session. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. and we'll be at Central Middle School for that meeting. And then March 30th is a no school day. It's a non-contract day. Does anyone else have any other announcements or dates that I have not included on my list?
Tammy, I just remind everybody, it's not related to us directly, but there is a vote tomorrow on the penny sales tax. So don't forget that.
Thank you, Nathan. That is, so get out to the polls and vote
Or you go to the
tomorrow.
basketball game.
There you go. There you go. And if you don't know where your polling location is, you can certainly Google that. I bet the auditor's office would also be taking phone calls tomorrow. If you need to give them a call, they could help direct you so that you can get to the right location. So that is important to get out and vote. Anything else?
Go Muskies.
Yeah.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I was a little nervous there for a minute. And is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I know, I'm like, what do we?